First Lady Michelle Obama has dismissed rumours of a divorce from her husband, the former President Barack Obama. Now, the former First Lady has not accompanied her husband to several high-profile events, including Donald Trump's inauguration and the funeral of former President Jimmy Carter, fueling speculation that the couple might be separating. But during her appearance on the Work in Progress podcast hosted by actress Sophia Bush, Mrs. Obama said that she was now in a position to control her own calendar as a grown woman. Let's take a listen to what she had to say.
And the interesting thing is that when I say no, for the most part, people are like, I get it, and I'm okay, right? And that's the thing that we, as women, I think we struggle with, like, disappointing people.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so much so that this year people were, you know, they couldn't even fathom that I was making a choice for myself, that they had to assume that my husband and I are divorcing. You know, this couldn't be a grown woman just making a set of decisions for herself. Right.
Right.
But that's what society does to us. We start actually finally like going, what am I doing? You know, who am I doing this for? And if it doesn't fit into the sort of stereotype of what people think we should do, then it gets labeled as something negative and horrible.
Very interesting feedback there from former First Lady Michelle Obama. I do think that sometimes people don't need to address rumours, but I think she made it seemed like it was important, especially during the context of what they were talking about, which is women in education, what her priorities are, and her just talking about how she's in control of her calendar. She'll need to follow that man everywhere he goes. And those are your stories from around the world.
She's spot on, and she just had to clear that rumour because Fox News had been making the rumour mills even louder, the likes of Daily Mail and all of that, and all the rubbish and the verbiage they've been saying. So kudos to her there. And as regards the family, very sad one. You know, at some point I was fingers crossed. I was sort of like praying for a miracle on the Hudson again and thinking that some Captain Sully, you know, was just going to make things right. But it's a very sad one. As regards Bryce Sungema, what do you expect? The only thing Bryce has not done is, unlike other African coup plotters, he has decided to stick with France because of his own selfish benefits and all of that. But this election is not going to upturn anything as regards democratic antecedents in the country. The country has never been democratic to start with since the days of Ali Bongo after he took over from the former president. The former president died. I mean, Omar Bongo is father than Ali Bongo.
Yes.
He's going to win this election, you know, easily. He's been able to use the electoral vote to prevent other top candidates from getting through the ranks and getting in there. So what he's just going to do is going to consolidate himself in power. The playbook is the same across every African leader. Abacha too wanted to do the same. He will manifest himself, and probably at some point his children too will feel it's right for them to be able to run for government in this country. We've seen people do the same. Bokassa of Central African Republic did the same. In the end, there will still be a leader that will come, and despite all of his atrocities in his country, will say he has not done wrong, just like Francois Bozize did to Jean Bede Bokassa, saying that he had not done any wrong, and they restated him. In fact, his son even ran in government. So it looks as though all of these African tyrants, they never suffer for all the rubbish they have done on the African continent. So it's not going to be different. He's going to win the elections. There's nothing that can stop him. That's the sad reality of the Africa we live in today. There is no accountability. And that's why looters and perpetrators of evil in this continent keep getting away with it. And they will be supported by people like France. You can see Emmanuel Macron with his head. Because he needs raw material. He needs manganese from him. They also need a little bit of petrol.
So you're not convinced, no?
Oh.
Right. To New York. So I was looking at some of the statistics, and since 1977, we've had 38 people dying from helicopter crashes. Most recently, that wasn't in New York, but you remember the crash, the airplane in Washington, the plane and the helicopter has triggered a relook at some of the framework and the rules in which helicopters are allowed to fly and so forth, because it's clear that there's a problem. It's clear that there's something going on with helicopters. And, you know, they often talk about how, you know, if you've been to New York, you know about the number of tourist helicopters there are. Some of them don't even have doors so that you can take good pictures and get a good look and so forth. So now there's just a rethink about how safe are these and where are we getting it wrong? Because there's certainly something wrong in the system. Very, very sad to hear about that. Michelle Obama, my. I think it's so sad that we now live in a world where a whole Michelle Obama and all her achievements and accomplishments now has to come down to start addressing this type of, cheap gossip, if I may call it that.
Fox News.
I think it wasn't from Fox News.
Fox was spreading it to evidence deal by.
Anyway,
there was Fox News.
I think it's unfortunate because there's so much value that she has to offer, which she does offer. I'm glad she's doing this podcast, which is sort of just a remake of herself and just her rebuilding her brand and stuff. And we've seen a lot of that. She's written the books and she engages with the likes of Oprah and so forth. And in this podcast, she's decided to give more of her personal side. And, it's almost like a personal mentorship that she's doing. I like that take on sort of life after official public service, life after being a first lady, because most first ladies do sort of just step back into the shadows. But I love that she understands that she carries a lot of influence and she's managing that very well and a lot of political goodwill as well. So, you know what? Well, she had to debunk this, but I wish we could focus on the stronger and more impactful parts of her messages than whatever's happening in her marriage. I don't think it's consequential to the price of bread.
Okay, in my view, what are the key editorial points with these stories? Because we editorialize, so can we focus on the editorial points? With regard to Gabon, there was a coup in Gabon in 2023, where Brice Nguema removed his cousin, who was president, who took over from his father, who had been there for about 45 years, in 2009. And then, the Bongo family had, ruled Gabon for 56 years. So he came in as a military commander of the guards. Now he wants to be president. The one issue that we should focus on is that this is about transition. He wants to be president. He wants to civilianize himself. He was born 50 years ago, March, I think, 1975. So, number one point is that what does this say about the recent coups that we had in Africa, in Mali, in Niger, in Burkina Faso? Would this send a strong signal to these other countries about coup making, coup plotting, coup execution in Africa?
Agreed.
Number two is that he will win on Saturday, April 12th.
So you agree with Rufai?
No.
Despite the 7 opposition candidates?
I have no doubts
about it. So there's no democracy in Gabon again?
I have no doubts about that. Because the Gabon independent so-called electoral commission is very corrupt. It's fraudulent. It was fraudulent under Ali Bongo. It will be fraudulent also now. So the major challenger is former Prime Minister Alain Nze, who is probably an Igbo man that ended up in Gabon during the Civil War. A lot of Igbos, exported to Gabon.
I actually didn't know that.
During the Civil War, yeah.
In fact, the story about even Bongo, Ali Bongo himself.
And they have been in that system.
Yeah,
so
not independently to verify, but there's no story about
Alain Nze is not going to win. He's going to be, this Brice Nguema, who is a cousin of Ali Bongo. A major issue in this election is a point about dynasty. But in 2024, I think November, there was this constitutional reform in which most of the things there talked about, we don't want dynastic rule in Bongo, military can also be there. And now they have in the constitution what they call a 7-year single term that is also renewable. So what Nguema is trying to achieve is also another sit-tight rule in Africa. Because if he wins, he will do 7 years, which is renewable for another 7 years. In other words, I don't see how Nguema's emergence is going to address the Bongo legacy problem that seems to be an issue, in Gabon at the moment. But let's leave all these political issues and constitutional issues, and talk about the people of Gabon. 2.3 million of them, 860,000 of them are registered voters. They are going to vote. We'll see the turnout on Saturday.
Yes.
They have issues. Unemployment is over 40% in that country. There are issues in terms of exports. They export timber, manganese, and all of that, but there's also corruption. What's his name? Nguema says he's campaigning on the basis of anti-corruption. He calls it Sebon. It's good. Sebon. It's good. So these are the issues in Congo. As for what is that other issue, which I can comment on very briefly, Mrs. Obama.
Yes.
Yeah, Mrs. Obama made the point that, look, this is what we women get. She wrote a book, Becoming, where she talked about challenges for being a first lady, for being the wife of a prominent woman. She says now, as a grown woman, she wants to control her own time. She was not at Carter's burial.
Funeral.
She was not at Trump's inauguration. And now people are saying, oh, it looks like there is a divorce. And she says, look, I'm a human being. I'm a grown woman. I acknowledge the fact that women have to support their husbands. But this is a grown woman, as she defined herself, saying, I have time, I can be allowed to have time for other things.
Agreed.
But I think all wives should be encouraged to support their wives. But their husbands. But we have this confirmation from Mrs. Obama that she's not leaving her husband. She's standing firm in spite of the challenges that she defined in her book, Becoming.
Thank you very much for all of your submissions. Let's move